I'm Stephen Thomas. I'm the campaign coordinator, the energy campaign coordinator with the Ecology Action Centre out of Nova Scotia. I'm grateful to be here today as a guest on unceded Wolastoq territory and the traditional meeting place of the Passamaquoddy, Mi'kmaq, of the Nations. I'm grateful for the presentation and knowledge sharing that Sheila was just able to share with us too. Since 1971, the Ecology Action Centre, who I'm here presenting, has been working to build a healthier, more sustainable Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. Today, the EAC is Atlantic Canada's largest environmental advocacy organization with over 5,000 members, 500 volunteers, 45 staff, and 7 action areas, including the one that I'm presenting from, the Energy Action Team. The EAC works closely with social and natural scientists to use detailed policy analysis and encourage a society that respects and protects nature and provides environmentally and economically sustainable solutions for its economies and its citizens. The EAC plans to provide comment and questions here today based on our research, our analysis, and partnership with concerned organizations and industries here in Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. In particular, our content is informed with the guidance gained during a week-long tour of the Bay of Fundy coasts in Nova Scotia in June of 2016. These events included stops in Halifax, Wolfville, Digby, and Yarmouth, and many of the individuals from those communities consider themselves directly affected in this process, although I myself do not. To this end, my remarks will also include information presented to me on behalf of the Bay of Fundy INSHORE Fishermen's Association later in my presentation. I've numbered each of my 6 questions and addressed them to the chair to address to the board and proponents unless otherwise stated, and intend to ask them as a group and open for response after I finish. The exact content of my questions varies slightly from the written requests, or the written questions rather, that I provided to the board. I'm happy to provide the final version if it's requested. So my first question is, can the proponent confirm the capacity, class, and specification of the oil transport tankers that are intended to be used to further transport the diluted bitumen in particular from the Irving facility that has been sourced from the Energy's pipeline? Earlier today we heard a variety of types of tankers will be employed, including the VLCC class with a capacity of up to 2.2 million barrels. So specifically, I'm asking about the specifications with regard to the maneuverability and full stop specification of this class of tanker. My second question, can the proponent confirm what specific spill response can be expected if a major spill occurs during the transportation along the Energy's pipeline route, processing and transportation within the Irving export terminal and holding facilities, or loading onto awaiting supertankers for further transportation? Specifically, can the proponent confirm the time it would take to dispatch a response and fully contain a major nearshore, onshore, or offshore spill in the Bay of Fundy and Gulf of Maine? Further, can the proponent confirm the amount of time it would take to fully remediate a major spill event nearshore, onshore, or offshore in the Bay of Fundy or Gulf of Maine? For clarity here today and for time's sake, I understand that the proponent has already shared their planned spill prevention measures and the safety measures there within during today's panel session, and I would appreciate that my question is specifically in regard to the response in the event of a spill event. My third question, can the proponent and board please clarify the jurisdiction and responsibility of response for the below accident and spill events? That is a major spill at or near the Irving holding facility and export terminal in St. John and Redhead, New Brunswick. It is the major spill or diluted bitumen during transportation to and loading of awaiting tankers in the Bay of Fundy. And again, the responsibility and jurisdiction for a major accident, spill event, or strike associated with the transportation of diluted bitumen aboard tankers in the Bay of Fundy or Gulf of Maine that was sourced from the Energy's pipeline and Irving export terminal. My fourth question, can the proponent confirm that the below sectors, industries, and constituencies in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick be compensated in full for the damages claimed in the event of a spill event, strike event, or other accident? That is, all affected fisheries and fishery-dependent industries in the Bay of Fundy and Gulf of Maine, all affected tourism industries, especially those based on the Bay of Fundy or its coastline, as you can imagine, whale watching and small guided tours and so on. And all affected coastal residences cleanup, human health, and property value claims related to a spill event, strike event, or other accident. Again, looking for the specific compensation there. My fifth question. The Ecology Action Centre's motion request for a panel session to be held in Nova Scotia was denied by a decision by the board on July 27th, 2016. And here today, I'm wondering if the chair, the board, and the proponent can confirm the intent to hold a panel hearing and public consultation in the province of Nova Scotia to ensure that Nova Scotian voices are heard in regard to the risk of this pipeline project and associated loading of tankers and tanker traffic. My sixth and final pointed question here. My sixth and final pointed question here is, can the proponent and board confirm the consultation that has taken place to date with Mi'kmaq communities in Nova Scotia regarding the tanker traffic and risk profile of the Energy's pipeline project to the Bay of Fundy and the coasts of Mi'kmaq territory in Nova Scotia? These conclude my pointed questions. However, as noted, in addition to the questions and comments presented by the Ecology Action Centre, comments and concerns are presented to me from a key expert in our analysis, Colin Sproul, the spokesperson for the Bay of Fundy INSHORE Fishermen's Association, who represents over 1,000 members in Nova Scotia and is the largest fishers association in Nova Scotia, has asked me to provide the below comments on behalf of the association. They are as follows in their voice, if you can imagine. The high-level concerns: the Bay of Fundy INSHORE Fishermen's Association are a long-standing stakeholder in the Bay of Fundy and are concerned about the proposed Energy East pipeline and about the review being undertaken by TransCanada, Irving, and the National Energy Board. We have never been consulted by the proponent about this project or the associated tanker traffic through the Bay of Fundy and take issue with this fact. We hold valuable generational knowledge that should be utilized in regulatory decision-making, especially regarding the sustainability of the Bay of Fundy. The Bay of Fundy contributes significantly to the food security of Canada with its massive bounty of sustainably harvested seafood each year. In 2015 alone, nearly $1 billion of seafood was harvested from the Bay of Fundy. This proposed project would endanger that security and endanger the viability of a multi-billion-dollar fishing industry that depends on that bounty. Canada has recently signed the United Nations Treaty to uphold the historical rights of small-scale fishers like the members of the Bay of Fundy INSHORE Fishermen's Association. This treaty is intended to prevent the displacement of traditional fishers from their rightful fishing territories by large-scale industry as is being proposed for this project. We have come to a point in time where many industries wish to operate in the Bay of Fundy. This industrialization of the Bay of Fundy cannot be undertaken with total disregard for the life within it. The members of the Bay of Fundy INSHORE Fishermen's Association see ourselves as stewards of the seas on which we spend our lives. The Bay of Fundy is one of the most diverse ecosystems in the world, truly a marvel of nature. The prospect of a post-Panamex supertanker filled with Alberta tar sands running aground in the shallow and treacherous waters of the Bay of Fundy is an absolute worst-case scenario in the eyes of our membership, and this would undoubtedly be the end of our way of life. We know the Bay of Fundy, and it is not a safe, reasonable place to navigate a ship of that size with such dangerous cargo in such extreme tides. There are two more sections of his remarks here. There's one regarding gear loss. The massive increase in tanker traffic that is proposed will have a significant impact on lobster fisheries in particular in the Bay of Fundy, who need to make their living in the approaches of the St. John Harbour and the Canaport area. They already suffer from uncompensated gear loss in the Bay of Fundy every year due to oil tankers not avoiding the fishing activities as is required by maritime law. This increased gear loss could lead to increased entanglements of marine mammals, with the loss of this fishing gear, including the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale. Regarding the spill cleanup and risks, the Bay of Fundy INSHORE Fishermen's Association questions that the methods proposed by the proponent could ever be employed to effectively clean up a bitumen spill of such enormous size from the seafloor or the surface of the sea in the Bay of Fundy. We point out the important fact that a surface oil spill in the Bay of Fundy would spread faster than almost anywhere else on Earth and enter its critically important estuaries in a very short period of time. As you know, the flow through a single tidal cycle in the Bay of Fundy is greater than all of the world rivers combined, and it would take any spill and contaminant with it. A key concern is that the pristine reputation of the Bay of Fundy would be tainted forever by an oil spill, rendering any remaining harvestable seafood valueless. That concluded the remarks from the Bay of Fundy Inshore Fishermen's Association. I thank you for your flexibility in my being able to present those as well as part of my remarks. And this concludes the remarks presented by both myself and the association. And this concludes the time that I intend to use for questions and commenting during this panel session. I'm open to hearing answers and responses from the board, the chair, and the proponents, and I'm happy to answer further questions and have further discussion on this topic as the process moves along. Thank you for your time.
If I could just raise a quick point before turning it over to the proponent. You raised what I believe were two questions which to address to the board, and I would just remind you that the board is not here to answer questions during the panel sessions. That being said, I know that one of them was a legal question of jurisdiction with respect to tankers. And if the proponents, if you wish to speak to that issue, you may, but the board will not speak to that issue. It's a legal question that's not before us. The second one on the issue of the motion, you will recall the board did issue a decision on 27 July. If you wish to request a review or appeal of a board decision, I would refer you to section 21 of the NEB Act. You could file such a request in writing if you choose to do so, but it's not something that I think the panel would be able to address directly orally today.
Great, thanks for the clarification in that regard. Specifically, when in speaking of the jurisdiction of responsibility for spill response, if the proponent could answer that, I'd appreciate it. And in the finer points of my wording there, I was asking for clarity or confirmation on the intent to hold a panel hearing and public consultation. I understand the board perhaps can't answer that today. I do intend to file a written submission, and I can handle that later if the proponent...
The board did answer that request in a letter of July 27, which is a ruling and decision number 16. Now, as I said, if you wish to appeal a ruling of the board, you may do so, and I'd refer you to section 21 of the Act, but they have already answered your notice of motion in the ruling that was issued on July 27.
I understand that's true for the panel sessions, as is being held today. My further notes here on the public consultations taking place. Thank you for the clarification, and on to the proponent, I guess.
Mr. Yates. A couple of things, Mr. Chairman, which I'll raise before the panel responds to some of the questions. I would take the position that the panel will not respond to the question about the panel session in Nova Scotia for the reasons articulated by Mr. Watton. Secondly, the jurisdictional question is a question of law, and the panel will not be responding to that either. I had, though, a question for clarification. It started as a submission from the Ecology Action Center and morphed into several comments made purportedly on behalf of the Bay of Fundy Inshore Fishery Association. The question is whether the Bay of Fundy Inshore Fishery Association is in fact an intervener in this proceeding.
I'm happy to answer that. They're not an intervener as part of this process. Not yet.
And in that regard, then, Mr. Chairman, I submit that all of this submission on behalf of the Bay of Fundy Inshore Fishery Association cannot form part of the record of this proceeding, since they are not an intervener and they are not entitled to make a presentation here, leaving aside entirely the question of whether the Ecology Action Center would have any entitlement to make a submission on behalf of the Bay of Fundy Inshore Fishery Association.
Mr. Thomas. Any submissions by the Ecology Action Center here will be considered, but we cannot accept without, there are many other ways of doing it, but that fisheries organization that you're talking about is not an intervener. This is a process for interveners. So we'll have to agree with the